What is up here today, YouTube? Jigsaw0097 making another movie review as part of my Shaky Cam Sucks movie reviews. Wanted to make this movie review because this is one of the few movies I've seen in a while, guys, that really just kind of stuck with me in a way that it doesn't really happen for me that much in movies nowadays. Just because most of the movies that I go out and watch, I don't like thoroughly identify with anymore. I guess I shouldn't say identify with, but you know, just movies that make me think really hard, like older movies from like the 70s or 80s. As you guys may or may not know, I'm like a huge movie fan. If you guys can see over there, you know, I've got like tons of Blu-rays. I watch movies a lot. And I love movies that really delve into character psyches, you know, character study movies, movies that explore controversial and difficult topics of the time or current times, whatever. You know, you got movies from the 70s, 80s, 90s, and movies that go over difficult subject matter. Usually pertains to that time and period, but regardless, it's nonetheless extremely interesting. And of course, the movie I'm talking about today, guys, is Joker. This movie just came out this past weekend, starring Joaquin Phoenix, directed by Todd Phillips. Todd Phillips is primarily a comedy director. I think he did like The Hangover back in the day, like old school. You know, he was one of those like American Pie, you know, comedy directors. So to see a movie like this coming from a mind like Todd Phillips, really unexpected, and in many ways I feel like this is his magnum opus, and also maybe a new direction for Todd Phillips, for the better, because I'll get right into it. This is going to be a very spoiler-heavy review as well. So if you guys have not seen the movie yet, it's Wednesday. I think it came out last weekend. So it's been out for a while, so I'm assuming most of you have seen it by now. It's got like 100 million at the box office, so people are definitely going to watch this movie. So, but if you have not seen it, please click off this video. Please do yourself a service and go watch this movie first. It is a movie I would recommend, even if you haven't seen trailers, just don't even watch trailers. Go into this movie completely blind and completely open-minded to what you may or may think a Joker film should be, the character, whatever. Just go into this movie completely, you know, clueless to what's actually going to go down. But if you have seen the movie, stay with me here, and I will kind of go over it. So, really, Joaquin Phoenix's performance in this movie, and I do feel like I got to talk about some other movies here. If you guys have seen Taxi Driver, The King of Comedy, there's some very heavy Martin Scorsese references in this movie. Not even references, I just say kind of stylistic approaches. But it still has its own unique direction, I guess you could say. Like, the way it was filmed feels very different. And like I said, Todd Phillips is primarily, before this, he was a comedy director. So I can't really compare this work to other works of his similar to this, because there really is nothing similar to this with his filmography, guys. So this is really just one of those movies that you kind of look at. I think Martin Scorsese actually produced this movie. I could be wrong. But and Robert De Niro is actually in the movie as well. So that's a clear reference to, I feel like, them casting him, really. And I think Joaquin Phoenix has said he's like Joaquin Phoenix's like favorite actor of all time. But the fact that you would have De Niro in this movie really shows you that they're wearing their inspiration on their sleeve, and they're not afraid, they're not ashamed of that. So clearly Taxi Driver influence. And I'll just kind of go into the brief synopsis here. So the movie follows a character named Arthur Fleck. As you guys probably know, if you're heavy comic book readers, there is no Arthur Fleck in the comics. The Joker is not really ever addressed when it comes to his origin. He's always just a guy that's wanted to watch the world burn. You know, he exists for the sole purpose of making Batman's life complete hell. So for them to put a name to him and, you know, give him a background, this is wholly original, guys. This is really is something we've never really seen. Now, there is comic book stories like The Killing Joke that kind of go into his backstory, but this is like a full-on in-depth. What I was saying to my friend is I feel like this is almost like the Batman Begins for the Joker, because Batman Begins, the reason that was such an awesome movie of the time is because a lot of movies about Batman or comic books about Batman never really went into why he became Batman, until Christopher Nolan, of course, came by and made, in my opinion, the masterpiece trilogy that is the Dark Knight trilogy, really going into the psyche of Batman. And those three movies are very standalone, which is another thing I love about the Christopher Nolan way he did that. You know, the format, the structure of that movie, better than any other superhero movie, I think. Other than maybe like Spider-Man 2. That's my all-time favorite superhero movie. But the Dark Knight trilogy really stands on its own in that regard of just making a self-contained character study, basically. Crime drama about Bruce Wayne. And with Joker, I feel like Todd Phillips has done exactly that for the Joker character. And it's just amazing, honestly. But yeah, so they give him a name, Arthur Fleck. He lives with his mom, who's kind of, you know, she's a little cuckoo as well. You can tell she's like a geriatric or not all there. But he takes care of his mom. He works as a clown for various companies. He's like an entertainer as well. But the movie starts out with him, you know, putting makeup on, and he does that whole that you've seen in the trailer, and you can just tell from the beginning that this is a very broken man. You know, life is just kicking him in the nads when he's down at almost every turn. I've never seen someone's life, just everything wrong going on in someone's life like this. But he's seeing like a therapist, you know, he's on like 7 different medications. He's just barely keeping it together. And so one day while he's at work, one of his friends gives him a gun. And it's not really clear why he gives him the gun. There's a couple theories. Either this guy really is looking out for him. It's all in his mind, which I will get to as I go on, or the guy was actually like trying to get him fired, because he actually ends up getting fired because of this, which sets him in a way down the path of becoming the Joker. But he's just really living a crappy life, you know. He lives in this like dump apartment. That's something this movie nailed, by the way, because I'm a huge Batman fan, and Gotham City in Batman is a character in and of itself. And that's something you really have to do right if you're going to make up any kind of Batman story. And they nailed that, guys. Like, Gotham City in this movie is just like, it looks very New Yorkish, but the thing I love about Gotham, and Christopher Nolan did this as well, is you can almost take elements of like every city, like that's kind of like crappier, you know, like you could take like the bad parts of Chicago, the bad parts of like Baltimore, even like the gritty, industrial side of like Pittsburgh, and they kind of just like mash this all together. That's what Gotham is. It's just like every crap hole city you can imagine in one. Every like crap hole part of a city just made into one, and that's Gotham. Gotham is in no way a good city at all. And that's probably part of Batman's insanity, is that he wants to defend it. But they show that in this movie so great, so effectively. Like, you almost feel dirty watching some of the scenes. Like, his apartment is just disgusting. The subway that he takes is just gross. You know, the comedy club that he works in just has this real grimy, third world almost feel to it. So they got that one down. It really makes you feel for this character in that regard, that it's like, you know, this environment that he's living in is just toxic to his well-being. So anyway, he's basically taking care of his mom. You know, he's trying to become a stand-up comedian, but he's like not funny. He has this condition, which this is another cool thing they did. He has this condition where he whenever like he gets nervous or sad or scared or whatever, anxious, he starts laughing. And this is based on a real thing, guys. Apparently Joaquin Phoenix looked up some videos about people that actually have this condition, where he just starts like uncontrollably laughing, but it like hurts his throat. You know, he's like crying and laughing at the same time. It's really hard to watch, but again, it's just attributed to Joaquin's like flawless acting in this movie, that you feel so bad for the guy in so many ways, because, you know, he starts laughing and like people take that as like he's like insulting them or whatever. Just one second. Sorry. They take it as like an insult, where they think that he's laughing at them, but he can't really control it, I guess. So he starts laughing like on the bus. They show he's on a bus. You might have seen this in the trailer, where he's kind of like making a kid laugh or whatever, and the mom, you know, she's like calls him a creep and tells him to stop, and then he starts laughing and tells her he can't control it. But it kind of just shows like there's just so many things in this movie that build towards him breaking, like kind of like Breaking Bad in that way, where, you know, he's trying, but like the world just keeps punching him when he's down. You know, the movie starts with he's out on the streets with this sign and these kids steal it, and you probably saw that in the trailer as well. The trailer really shows way too much of this movie. It kind of gives you like the whole beginning of the movie if you watch the trailer and after you've seen the movie. But they beat him up, you know, he gets beat up. And then later on, this is kind of what sets him on his path, I guess you could say, is that he's on the subway after getting fired because he has that gun. That guy gave him the gun, and I guess he's just carrying it on him at all times. And he's doing like a performance in like a children's hospital, and the gun falls out of his pocket or whatever, and they see it. And that's what causes him to get fired, essentially. The guy says, you know, why do you have a gun on you? You're fired. So he's riding the subway home, and these like yuppies, I guess, are on there harassing this woman, which, you know, you don't really know what happens with these guys, but these guys don't seem like good people. They seem like scumbags. Maybe they possibly were going to rape this woman. Who knows? But Arthur starts getting nervous, and so he starts laughing. Like I said, he can't control it. He starts laughing uncontrollably, and he's like in his clown makeup still because he was just on the job. And these guys, you know, get annoyed, take offense to this or whatever. So they go up to him and they say, you know, why are you laughing? And they end up beating him up over this. It's a really awesome scene, but it's also kind of sad because like you do feel really bad for Arthur in this situation, you know, because you really want to root for this guy. That's something this movie did, actually. Like, it made me feel bad for the Joker, to the point where I didn't want this guy to become the Joker. Like, I knew once he became the Joker, all sympathy is gone. I can't feel bad anymore. But like the lead up to that, it's just like you really feel bad for this guy that's just like getting kicked in the nads. You know, life is just won't give him a break. And so these guys on the subway start beating on him, basically, you know, beating him up, and he pulls the gun that he had and kills him. Shoots one guy in the head, the other guy he shoots like 3 times in the chest, you know, they're dead. He hits the other guy, and the other guy starts running away. And you're like, okay, he defended himself. But what really in this scene makes you feel like, okay, he's liking this a little too much, is he actually chases the other guy down that's running away and executes him. So he kills all 3 of them. And then he starts running, you know, this is kind of like the bit by a spider moment in Spider-Man. This feels like this is like the one thing that happens that kind of sets him on this path. But then he goes into this bathroom, and just really, again, the set design in this movie, the bathroom is just like a dive. But he starts dancing, you know, he starts doing those, if you've seen the trailer, again, he's doing those weird like Joaquin dancing things. And you can kind of tell that this is where like almost an alter ego forms. So he's kind of got like another personality inside of him now, and that is the Joker. Whereas you have the unconfident, meek, you know, reclusive Arthur Fleck, who's afraid of the world, you know, he's afraid of everything, no confidence. Now you've got this Joker persona that, you know, he's not afraid, he's confident, and it's almost like, again, it goes to like Breaking Bad, like Walter White. There's like the school teacher Walter, but then there's the drug dealer Walter. So it's kind of like that. There's Heisenberg. So really interesting on that, but he's in this bathroom, and that's kind of when he has his like awakening. And so obviously the movie continues from there in the form you might expect, where, you know, he's living in the slums of Gotham. They could be like the Narrows and the Dark Knight trilogy. I'm not sure what part of Gotham he actually lives in, but it's definitely like the poor quarters, because what he did on the subway actually like inspired that particular part of town. So they start donning the clown masks. They start protesting, all that stuff. And meanwhile, Arthur, he's dating this woman, this black girl that he meets in an elevator, you know, and it's kind of a cool, creepy scene where, you know, she's got her kid there, and she goes like, you know, like, I can't handle this anymore, which kind of makes her like not a very good mother, I guess. This whole character is very interesting, this woman character, because as I get on later in the review, I'll kind of talk about that. But basically, he starts dating this woman that he met in the elevator, and so he goes to this jazz club, you know, because he killed these people. It's like all of a sudden he's got all this confidence in life. All of a sudden, you know, it was like it's almost like a metaphor. It's like when a guy finally gets laid, you know, all of a sudden he has like confidence. And in a way, like the Joker killing people, you know, he stood up for himself for like the first time in his life, is what it feels like in the movie. And so because of that, he has all this confidence to face the world in a different light, I guess. So after he gets fired, he goes back to the job, and, you know, he's just very confident. He gets like his final check, and he takes all of his crap out of the locker. You know, he cleans his locker out, and then he just leaves, but he just feels different. So he goes to this comedy club. You know, like I said, he's trying to be a stand-up comedian, but he's not really funny. He misses the punchline. But because he's got this newfound confidence, he decides to go there. And this is another scene where, like, when I watched it, I felt really bad for the guy, again, because he gets up there and he gets, like, all nervous, and he starts laughing like he can't stop it, and he's, like, choking while he's laughing, and he's, like, trying to talk and deliver the joke, but he just can't do it. And his girlfriend's in the crowd as well, you know, so I guess that helps him. That helps him continue, but so he does that, and then what else? So yeah, like I said, the whole city is getting inspired by what he did. He's getting more confidence. These two detectives, start actually investigating him as well during this time. So yeah, these cops are investigating him, and during this time, he hangs out with his mother like a lot. You know, he helps take care of her. They show that early in the movie. He's like bathing her and all that stuff. She seems very geriatric, harmless. Just one of those traditional single mother scenarios, I guess, where like the father had a kid, abandoned her, and then her son is all she has. He's the man of the house. And he watches this show with her all the time. This is where Robert De Niro's character kicks in. It's kind of like a Jay Leno type show. Excuse me. And you can tell that Arthur fantasizes that De Niro's character could be like a father figure in his life. So his father figure is kind of a delusional character as well. He has like delusions of grandeur where he thinks that, you know, he's going to be on this talk show. Robert De Niro's character is going to, you know, accept him as like his son, all that stuff. Because he doesn't really have a strong male influence in his life. It's really just his mother and then all these people that are just kind of crappy to him. So anyway, something develops with his mother where one night after he goes on a date with his new girlfriend, he comes back and he's like really happy. He's like dancing with his mom, you know, helping her like get to bed and all that stuff. After he puts her to bed though, he finds a letter on her like side table. And the letter basically hints at the fact that she may or may not have had an affair with Thomas Wayne, and the Joker might be like an illegitimate son of his, you know. And this is like one of the things that when I first heard about this, because like the plot leaks came out quite a while ago, and I read about them a little bit. I wish I hadn't, but you know, I was so curious. But this was one of the things where I was like, okay, is this Arthur Fleck character gonna be like Bruce Wayne's like brother or something like that? Luckily, they didn't really go that route. He actually visits the Wayne Manor, and you get to see Bruce Wayne there. There's like a cool scene where, you know, he like makes Bruce smile like that, and I think it's Alfred comes out and gets him out of there. But the bottom line is, it looks like his mother was mentally delusional herself. Arthur is not actually her son. Technically, he was adopted, so he's not related to her in like blood-wise. She never had an affair with Thomas Wayne. It basically sounds like she harassed Thomas Wayne to the point where he had to fire her because she did work for him. But she was like in love with him. It was like a one-sided relationship where she was like madly in love with him, but he was just like having none of that. And so at a point it got kind of crazy, it sounds like, with them, and so he had to fire her. She also is revealed after Arthur goes to the Arkham State Hospital, which is like a really cool nod to Arkham Asylum. You can tell, again, this is an origin story to Batman, so Arkham Asylum isn't really like a thing yet, but they do have like an Arkham Mental State Hospital. And it was just really cool when he goes in there. That just had the, again, like I said, Gotham is a character in and of itself, and they nailed it in this movie. They 100% nailed it. But he goes in there and he basically starts questioning if his mom actually is insane after he confronts Thomas Wayne about it, and Thomas Wayne ends up punching him in the face. That was one thing I didn't really like, is that Thomas Wayne kind of got a little aggressive, because in the comics I know Thomas Wayne is just like a really, really good guy. He's like patient with people, and I don't think he would do that. But again, he did feel like he threatened Bruce, so maybe. But after basically Thomas Wayne tells him that his mom is crazy and that you're not my son, he goes to the mental state hospital to get some records, and he ends up stealing the records from this orderly. And this is when you learn all about his mother, and in my opinion, this is like the actual breaking point of Arthur Fleck. This is when he officially becomes like full on the Joker. He lets He lets the dark side take over. He finds out that his mom was abusive. She reveled in the abuse, actually. It was like a turn-on for her. And so she adopted this kid to get money because she was one of those like deadbeat type parents, type mothers or whatever, where she just basically wanted to abuse the state, you know, get free money from the government, and she adopted a kid because I guess they like paid her to do it. So essentially she used Arthur as like just a tool to get money and, you know, fulfill her sadistic fantasy, I guess, because she's dating this like really abusive guy. He chained the kid to a radiator, which in this case the kid is Arthur. Chained him to a radiator, beat him to death, half to death most of the time, you know. And then the mom would have like sex with him and he could hear it. And it's a really dark picture in the movie, and the most tragic part about it is his laughing condition is probably caused by brain damage, is what this revelation essentially reveals. So in a sense, his mother is to blame for all of his problems. And that's why he kind of snaps, because he realizes, you know, his mom has been lying to him his whole life. He has some insanely abusive memories that he has suppressed. And he snaps. He's sitting in the stairwell, you know, reading this, and he just starts laughing again because he can't help it. And during this time, his mom actually got sick. She's at the hospital right now. So while all this was going on, she was sick at the hospital. And so he basically goes to the hospital and kills his mom because, you know, it's the line where you might have heard in the trailer. He goes, "I used to think my life was a tragedy. Now I realize it's a comedy." And he kills her while he says that, basically fully cementing him into the Joker. And right after this scene, he goes to the apartment. You know, like I said, he's been dating this girl for a while. And he goes to the apartment and sits down in her apartment. He's all covered in rain, you know, he's wet. And she comes out and she's shocked that he's there. Like, who are you? Why are you here? And this is like the Beautiful Mind moment. If you guys have seen that movie, like a huge reveal. Turns out he was never dating this woman. It was all in his head. He basically saw her in the elevator. And that's something that's so cool about this character, is that maybe he didn't even see her in the elevator. Maybe this character's completely made up. Because apparently she works at this bank because he follows her, like earlier in the film. But I thought about this heavily. I was like, why would someone that works in a bank live in this like crappy apartment? Because the apartment that he lives in is like borderline homeless shelter. It's just like so run down. It's like a project where like I feel like only someone in poverty would live there. And people that work at banks, you know, they make a decent enough living. So it's a cool speculation with her character, whether she was a complete fabrication of his imagination or she was just someone he may have bumped into like once or twice in his life. And because he found her attractive, he kind of like hallucinated that they were like in this relationship together. But regardless, he shows up there and, you know, she's freaking out. She's like, "Can you please leave? Like, my daughter's asleep." And he looks at her and he does that gesture again. And then it just goes to him leaving the apartment. So we don't know what happened. This is one of the few kills, I guess you could say, in the movie where it's left completely ambiguous. There's really not a lot of evidence that he killed her. So you could really say that either A, she never existed. Maybe he was like confronting his delusion, I don't know. Or B, you know, he just didn't kill her. Maybe he just like let her live, because there's a scene later in the movie that hints at the fact that he doesn't just want to kill everyone. He really only wants to kill those that he feels have wronged him. But anyway, that whole thing gets resolved, and again, that's just another breaking point for him. His mom is already, you know, the cause for all of his problems in life. Now this girl that he thought liked him, you know, essentially rejected him in his own mind. So this is where he snaps, basically. He starts staying home a lot, you know. He's starting to put the makeup on, you know. He dyes his hair green. And then one of the coolest scenes in the movie happens after that. So his friends from the comedy club or whatever that he worked at the beginning of the movie come over, and one of them's like a dwarf. He's like a midget, and then the other one is the guy that gave him the gun, this like big guy, who, like I said, in Arthur's mind feels like that's the guy that got him fired, which really he probably did. They make this so great, like, because you could actually theorize that this guy never gave him a gun, and maybe like Arthur just like bought a gun. I don't know. There's a lot of things in this movie that make you feel like Arthur's lost it from like the beginning, and if you rewatch it, you probably pick this stuff out. I've only seen the movie once, but I'm already like thinking in my head that this could be the case. But regardless, Arthur thinks this guy screwed him over, basically. So in one of the coolest like Joker moments in the film, you know, he's got this pair of scissors in the back of his pocket when he opened the door, and he's shirtless in this scene. He's got just like the white on his face. You guys have seen the trailer. He's like leaning up like this, and he's like, it's a very unsettling look. His face is just white. He doesn't have any like red on or anything yet. And he ends up stabbing this guy in the eyeball with the scissors, and then, you know, stabbing him after that. And then he like beats his head against the wall like 5 or 6 times. It's a super gory, you know, violent scene. And this dwarf guy just like freaks out. He like goes in the corner, starts crying, and Arthur Fleck just like falls to the side after killing him, you know, kind of exhausted from exerting himself. And he basically tells the midget that he can leave. He's like, all right, I'll let you live. And when he let these guys into his apartment, he actually locked the door, which was like an awesome little touch that I realized after. Because when the midget tries to leave, he's too short. He can't reach up and get the lock out, so he can't get out of the apartment. And it's like one of those scenes where you're feeling like, okay, is Arthur actually going to let this guy go, or is he going to kill him as well? And he's just kind of like messing with him, because you don't really know at this point. This is why it felt like a great Joker moment, because that's the Joker. I mean, you just never really know what this guy's going to do. He's a loose cannon. He's unpredictable. But in really kind of a cool scene, he ends up unlocking the door, and then he kisses the guy on the head. He goes, "You were one of the few people that was actually nice to me." And he lets him go. And so that's why I'm saying he may not have killed the woman, because really, essentially, the woman never did anything to him. So he might have let her live. But in his own mind, she rejected him. So he also could have killed her as well. They leave that very ambiguous, which I kind of like. So anyway, after that, he ends up going on the show, Robert De Niro's show. Earlier in the film, by the way, I forgot to mention, Robert De Niro's character basically finds the video of him at the stand-up club where he's like struggling to make jokes, and he's laughing and getting embarrassed. And I guess the video, he talks about the video on his show, and the video gets so much traction and hits that they end up inviting Arthur to come on the show. So that's like where he's going now. He goes on the show, but he's wearing like full Joker makeup now, guys. You've seen this in the trailer. He's wearing like the red suit and all that stuff. But on his way there, those cops that were trailing him, they finally start chasing him down. And this is also a very awesome set piece scene. There's a riot going on at the time of this because of what he did. There's all these people dressed up like clowns again, and they're protesting, and so they're all on the subway and all on the streets and whatever, and he actually blends in with them. It's almost like Assassin's Creed style. He uses this clown crowd to kind of blend in, and he gets these cops killed. It looks like they get killed. They get like jumped by these clowns, and he just kind of wanders off, which it's a really cool scene. But then he gets to the show, and this is the infamous scene that you may have heard where he basically shoots Robert De Niro in the face. But the cool thing about this scene is that he's actually originally going on this show so that he can kill himself in front of everyone. But during the scene, while he's like on the thing, you can tell he kind of decides like, wait a minute, maybe I'll just live and I'll kill this guy instead. Because he starts confessing a lot. He starts talking about how like he did kill those guys in the subway and he doesn't feel bad for it. He's tired of lying about feeling bad for it. And, you know, he just basically has a Joker awakening moment where he just accepts all the horrible things he'd done. You know, he accepts his horrible life leading up to this and just kind of, he says he believes in nothing. He just, everything is a joke to him. You know, he thinks it's funny that he killed those people. And then he shoots Robert De Niro in the face. Boom. And it's a crazy scene. But it inspires like the whole city to riot, basically. The whole city becomes this like crazy, you know, it becomes Gotham, you know, in the comics. Like there's just these clown henchmen all over the city just burning things down, you know, blowing up cars and all sorts of stuff. And one of the coolest scenes in the whole movie is the theater, guys. If you guys know Batman, you know where I'm coming from. But Thomas and Martha Wayne and little Bruce leave this theater because of what's happening, the riots. And one of the clown henchmen actually kills them in the way that they normally die. You know, Thomas gets shot, then his mom gets shot, and he grabs the pearls off of her neck, which just leaves a young Bruce standing there. And, you know, you feel bad for Bruce, but you know, guys, you know what he's going to become. So that's a really cool scene. But basically, to wrap it up, this is kind of the end of the movie, is that the Joker gets caught. He's in an asylum and they're questioning him, and the movie kind of ends with him talking to this therapist, and he leaves the room with the therapist and he's like leaving blood trails while he's walking out, which signifies that he probably killed her too. But the movie was just a masterclass in character study. And one of the things that I really love about the whole Bruce Wayne thing at the end is that, similar to Batman being an idea, it kind of raises the question that the Joker is an idea. And if you think about it, it also shows that in some like ironic, sick twist of fate, Batman is born from the same chaos that the Joker is born from. And it's like people experience tragedy in life, you know, loss, grief, all that stuff. And there's two paths you can go. You can go down the road of chaos, or you can go down the road of justice, whichever you prefer. And Batman and the Joker are two sides of the same coin. We've always known that. But this movie really found a way to do it in an intelligent, solidified way. And honestly, the way that they did that, where I feel like anyone can be the Joker now, like maybe Arthur Fleck was just the spark of the idea, and the Jokers that we see in subsequent movies, comics, whatever, are just like a different guy in a clown suit, because the Joker is an idea. That's really cool, because obviously I feel like Arthur Fleck couldn't be the original Joker if they were going to continue this, because Bruce Wayne's a kid in this movie and Arthur's like in his 40s, so it's like he would be like 70 or 80 by the time Batman became Batman. So maybe not 70, he'd probably be like 50 or 60, but still he'd be old, which I guess if you're going by like the Jack Nicholson Joker, you know, which this heavily nods at, because in the Michael Keaton Batmans, it was the Joker that killed his parents. So really just I loved that aspect of it. I was like afraid how they were going to do something like that. You know, I was worried about how this whole Batman tie-in was going to work with this movie, but I thought they did it phenomenally, guys. It blew my expectations out of the water. So anyway, this has been a very long video, but that's kind of the movie. And really my takeaway with this movie is that, you know, if you know anyone in your life that suffers from mental illness or just really try to be nice to people, guys. That's my takeaway. Try to be compassionate, because you never know who's going to be on the verge of snapping. And it's a very sad fact of reality, but there's just a lot of people that get left behind, I guess, in life, and maybe feel like no one cares. So that's my takeaway from the movie, is that, you know, and I already live by this philosophy where, you know, I try to be nice to almost everyone. I don't really make enemies, but that's kind of the takeaway. But overall, just a great look at mental illness, you know, similar to A Beautiful Mind, which, if you guys have seen A Beautiful Mind, fantastic movie, one of my favorite movies on the subject of mental illness. But this movie is up there as well, and it was just a surprising movie. Very dark, though. This is not a happy movie. You will not really feel good leaving the movie. But if you're a Batman fan or a Joker fan, Joker is my favorite villain of all time, you know, so I get the character. Even though there was all that this controversy surrounding the movie about how this is like a dangerous film, whatever, which I think is like just nonsense. But if you're a Joker fan, you understand what Todd Phillips was going for. Joaquin Phoenix, just give the man the Oscar. He earned it in this movie. I can't think of a movie this year that has been this well acted. This is probably my favorite movie of the year, so I'd say go see it. But yeah, I'm giving this movie a 10 out of 10, guys. I really can't see anything wrong with the movie. Maybe like minor nitpick flaws, but overall the message of the movie and the actual goal of the movie, 100% accomplished. So I would recommend going and watching it. But that is my review. Sorry, this was a very, very long video. If you got all the way to the end, thank you so much for watching this. If you're new to the channel as well, hit that subscribe button, as I do movie reviews quite a bit on this channel. Well, not quite a bit, but I do them occasionally. And if you're also a returning subscriber, make sure you hit that notification bell so you can get notified whenever I make videos. Smaller channels, it's harder to get noticed on the YouTube algorithm. So any help you guys can do, sharing the videos, whatever, I really, really appreciate it. You guys are the best. I have an amazing subscriber base. Thank you guys so much for being around and helping the channel grow. But with that said, this has been Jigsaw0097 with my Shaky Cam Sucks Joker movie review. And I will talk to you all later.